Okay, so it looks like it's just about 12 o'clock. I think a bunch of people are still signing on, but I'm just going to share our kind of standard IIIF week slide. So you should be able to see, turn my video on too. So you should be able to see my slide just with that Google presentation. Just a quick reminder, we're in webinar mode, so everyone's muted. Type your questions into the Q&A form at the bottom of your Zoom window, and the presenters will be able to see that, but no one else will. So the presenters will read your question out loud, just so everyone on the phone knows what your question was, and then answer it. If anyone on the call is not yet a member of the IIIF Slack channel, please just email us at events@iiif.io, and we'll get back to you and send you an invite. I can put that email in the Q&A if anyone would like to join. And just a reminder that the recordings of all the sessions will be sent to everyone who registered about a week and a half after the event. So with that, I'm going to hand things over and we can start this session. Whoever is presenting first can just take over the screen share from me.
Ben, should we say something about the manuscript group first?
Yeah. So, gone ahead and put up just a brief overview slide of what we're going to do today. And welcome everybody to the IIIF Manuscript Community portion of IIIF Week. Many thanks to Josh, Meg, and Glenn for organizing everything that's happening here. They did a fantastic job of pulling together great content at fairly short notice for an entire week of IIIF celebration, and we're happy to have all of you here with us. I'm going to just introduce briefly the presenters that are going to be talking today. Laura Moriali and Serra Brumfield will present on some crowdsourcing efforts that have been underway. Peter Stokes is going to present on a wonderful new AI-based, machine learning-based project. Johannes Beiter is going to present on some of his recent work with text and OCR and IIIF. And then I think Leander Saiga is going to replace Annika Schur for today's presentation of the German Manuscript Portal. Régis Robineau is going to talk about recent activities at Biblissima, one of the leading lights in the IIIF manuscript community. And Jeffrey Whit will finish us off with his ever groundbreaking work with medieval manuscripts. Jeff, would you like to talk a little bit about the community group and what we do?
Sure, thanks, Ben. So if you're new to this group, we're the Manuscript Community Group, and we exist to sort of be a kind of, I don't know, we're a community group, so we exist to kind of mutually support each other as we implement IIIF, specifically with respect to manuscript use cases. So we meet quarterly, and you can join us on the Slack channel or on the Google groups where we'll announce our quarterly meetings. And at those meetings, we usually share or demonstrate working use cases that are going on in the manuscript community. We have people show demos of implementations, and we raise questions about how we can contribute feedback to the technical groups about things that might improve the manuscript experience and use of the IIIF specs. And with that, I think we can move to our first presentation. Yeah, Ben?
I think that's right. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and then Laura and Sarah, are you ready to go?
Yes, I think I'm going to be in the driver's seat at this point. I'll go ahead and start. All right. The Serra Challenge is a 2-week competition pitting 3 international teams of scholars against each other in a race to transcribe 3 copies of one text, a 15th century geographic treatise called La Sfera, or The Globe. Manuscript copies of the text are housed in many repositories, but each of the three teams brought together for this competition, that is, Team USA, Équipe France, and Squadra Italia, is tasked with transcribing a copy located in their home countries. The competition began Friday, May 22nd, and will continue until this coming Friday, June 5th. Now, La Sfera, very briefly, is a short text by Florentine merchant Gorodati, written in ottava rima, that presents 15th century knowledge about geography, astrology, and cosmology. It survives in at least 125 copies, 40 to 50 of which are illustrated. It's a relatively short, but very appealing and very accessible text. Now, the inspiration for a competition to transcribe versions of Dottie's work was the result, quite honestly, of just too much time on Twitter. In the earlier days of the lockdown in the US, Stanford Rare Books curator Ben Albritton and I were lamenting our mutual feelings of isolation and came up with the idea of a competition to connect with other scholars who might enjoy gathering around and engaging with the text through the act of transcribing it collaboratively. We identified La Sfera as a good candidate for communal transcription, since we could locate digitized versions of the text at Yale, the Arsenal in Paris, and the Vatican Library. Once we had chosen La Sfera as our base text, we began to set forth the terms of the competition. We decided to bring together three teams of roughly 10 scholars each, working over a 2-week period to transcribe the versions of this one text held in their home countries. Now, to facilitate the transcription process by so many scholars, we needed the images of the manuscript and a centralized place to transcribe. So Ben and I located the IIIF served images of the manuscripts, and Ben loaded them into Stanford Library's instantiation of From the Page. Participants could see the high resolution images, a very important point when transcribing, and could easily produce a keyboarded version of the text using From the Page. Now, once the transcription environment was established and the correct manuscripts were loaded, we recruited captains for each team from among our networks. To do so, we created a quick WordPress website to set out the terms of the competition and provide our contacts with the tools they needed for collaborative translation. We created team pages with links to the transcription platform, a project log to organize their work and track their progress, and a link to the rules and guidelines for the team effort so they knew what they were getting involved with. Now, once we had a group of team captains in place, we returned to our own networks and to Twitter on Thursday, May 14th to recruit participants. Within about 3 or 4 days of our first solicitation that you can see here from Twitter, the rosters were full and the team captains began to prepare for the start of the competition at the end of the following week on Friday, May 22nd. And once the competition began, you can see here with Ben's tweet, the competition was fast and furious. Within about 24 hours, roughly half of the transcription work had already been completed, and teams were moving on to the review stage. Ben and I, with many of the competitors, were constantly tweeting updates to track the progress of our transcription efforts, or to highlight what we had discovered in our manuscripts, whether it was a strange writing style, an unusual map, or even a party of dragons who were hanging out in a misidentified Tower of Babel.
Or I may call them updates. Many of us call them trash talk.
Indeed, yes. Our collaborators at From the Page called it trash talk. As you can see, and here are some of our Twitter responses. So during the first day of competition, that first 24 hours, our tweets attracted a lot of attention, from art historians who were interested in the images of the manuscripts, to other repositories who also had a copy of the text in their libraries, to fellow medievalists who were just interested in what we were doing, and to DH scholars who were intrigued by the competition's framework. After the first flush of excitement, the teams began to buckle down and engage in the nitty-gritty of producing a clean transcription, from working through uncertain renderings to establishing norms for image description or the placement of marginalia. And here you see Équipe France's beautiful transcription of Folio 69B to 70R. Here you can see in this new Mirador viewer, Team USA's wonderful transcription of their first page. Now, Team USA managed to submit its final version to the judges on May 28th, only 6 days after the 2-week competition had begun. And Equipe France did the same fewer than 3 days later. And then Squadra Italia put theirs in thereafter. Now, all of the submissions are currently in the hands of our 3 judges, who will declare a winner on the basis of 3 criteria: speed, accuracy, and team participation. And what, you say, is the prize for all this? Well, of course, international bragging rights for time immemorial, which is a very important prize after all. But really, all fun aside, if we take stock of what the competition accomplished, we can come away with a rather impressive list from this limited time event. We were able to bring together 33 scholars working on one single text. That's a lot of expertise on one particular item. We got the buy-in and the attention of our participating repositories. We increased the awareness of and experience with the collaborative transcription process. We created 3 completely new scholarly products and interest in continued engagement with this text. And we fostered community enjoyment and connection. And we've heard that several participants would readily repeat this experience using another text. So thanks for listening to my little introduction to that. I don't know if Sarah has anything else to add, but if you'd like to contact me about that, you can reach me at my Twitter handle or Ben as well.
Great job, Laura.
Thanks. Anything to add to that, Sarah? Sarah's one of our judges.
Not that I know anything about medieval documents, but I know a lot about collaborative transcription. So it'll be fun to see when we look at the data on how many people work on each page and how many people work on each document and how that process kind of lays out. That's what I'm really curious about, because you have this really concentrated period of time to look at.
Thank you, Laura and Sarah, very much. Why don't we move through the use cases first and then loop back for questions for everybody, because there might be some crosstalk between the different projects that are being presented. Peter, are you willing to go next?
Yes, no problem. Just let me share the screen. Okay, so I'm going to quickly present a project that we're working on at the École Pratique des Hautes Études in PSL in Paris. It's connected to the Scripter program on essentially the history of writing and resilience, which is a new European network. And the essential idea here is HTR, so automatic transcription of manuscripts. So it's based on Kraken, which is a very modular and fully open HTR engine, which is very flexible, something that's important for us because we have tens of different scripts that we need to work with. Everything from Takarian to Sumerian to Old Javanese to you name it, this needs to be able to manage. Because it's modular and flexible, it's not necessarily the easiest to work with. And so now we're adding on top of this also the web interface in eScriptorium. So the basic workflow here is you have your images, presumably, hopefully in IIIF. So you can take your IIIF manifest, import your manuscript, then either manually or automatically or some combination of both segment the images, in other words, find the lines in general. And what you may well want to do is take a model that's already been trained for the lines, correct it, adjust it for your material, then repeat to retrain and to improve the system as much as possible, and then go on from there. Once you have your lines detected, you can transcribe your text manually, or again, using HDR, the deep learning models, or import an existing transcription. For instance, we've had some discussion with other projects and other places for importing. Again, you then retrain until you get the results that you're happy with, and you can then export your text. And crucially, you can export your models as well. So unlike a lot of other existing HDR systems, the models themselves are open. You can take them, use them in other software, other systems, share them, and so on. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to very, very quickly, and partly in fast forward, show you a little bit of what this looks like at the moment. It's a prototype, but it's still pretty functional. So we can create our particular case. I'll do one in Latin because that's what I'm most familiar with. Not so exciting here. And then we have our images. I can drag and drop them if I have them already, but much more interesting is take a IIIF manifest. So I go to my favorite manifest source, in this case, Publicima Collections, find my manuscript. As we know from IIIF, I can simply drag and drop, start importing, and goes from there. I'll fast forward a bit because, of course, to import a manuscript takes a bit of time, but it starts coming in like this. Once we have it in place, I've just brought in 20 or so pages. I can find the images that I want and I can segment them. So as mentioned, there are various options here. I can take a model that's already existing. I can upload it from my own system, or I can select one. In this particular case, there isn't a model that's particularly well suited. So I'm going to use the default built-in system, which is a little bit naive, but still works pretty well. So it knows that I'm working in Latin, so it's already chosen left to right horizontal, but as you see, there are various other options available as well. And I segment my image, and again, I let it go. Once the images have been segmented, I may well want to go in and correct and adjust them. Or again, I could do this entirely from scratch. So we'd have different panels here. We can look at our image. We can look at the different views, such as here, where we see our lines and see how it's been found on the page. And then these other windows for the transcription, which we'll see in a minute. So accelerate a little bit here. I can go through, see the automatically detected lines. Again, it's pretty good, not quite perfect. So I can simply go through, delete the sections that I'm not interested in, adjust if I want the meshes and so forth until I'm happy with it. The idea again is not necessarily to be perfect, but to be good enough that I can retrain from my particular manuscript. Here, I might want to join the different lines. So it's a very simple process to do that, just as we go. And then at the end, I have a more complex page here, which, as you can see, is still handled pretty well. It's not quite perfect, but even relatively complex layouts it manages. So I might want to go through, adjust a little bit, cut. So here, 2 columns that were identified as one. I can cut them, or several columns at a time. Cut, adjust, and then again, update my model and retrain it on all the rest of the pages I have. To show you the sorts of things that we deal with, here's an Arabic manuscript, a relatively common Arabic layout, obviously quite complex. So again, fine, we just train our model for this layout, and you can see that it works pretty well. Again, with all the different scripts, we have all kinds of different things we need to worry about. Once we have that, then we can start the actual transcription. So if we don't have anything, as here, I can just go through line by line and type. The transcription system depends on whatever you want. Again, the system's very flexible, so you can train it to, in principle, any rules of transcription that you like, and then you get some results there. Or I might have, for instance, a text already aligned, so I can simply copy it, paste it into this other view, go through, and in this particular case, this came from a crowdsourcing project, so I may want to correct it, or run an HDR, correct the HDR, and so on. So the idea here, I can import text, correct it, run the HDR, get the training, correct the HDR, rerun the process, and so on and so forth, getting better and better all the time as I go. And just to remind you, as you saw earlier in here, we can import. At the moment, Alto and Page, but we're also looking very much at our IIIF annotations. I can export in different formats, different transcriptions, and again, we're looking at expanding this in the very near future to get my downloads. If I want to retrain, I can select the pages that I want as models and then retrain either my segmenter or my recognizer. Again, so here I might base it on an existing model, but I want to create a new model specific to my manuscript, and then again, export it, share it, and send it to you, whatever else I want. And then when that's all done, I select all the images, select the pages that we want, find the ones with the text, go into transcribe, select the model that I want. Off we go, and we should have a nice, carefully trained manuscript transcribed for us, again, to then export and work with from there. So I'm cutting and showing the key highlights. For more information, we have the eScriptor blog, there's the Kraken webpage. The code is already available, although of course it's very much in prototype. So the GitLab for eScriptorium and GitHub for Kraken. And we also, as mentioned, have a couple of public repositories in case you want to share your models, but of course that's entirely up to you. We have now finally some more substantial hardware, some GPUs. Unfortunately, because of the confinement, the lockdown, we haven't been able to put those in place. But once we do, once we get some proper hardware behind it, then we'll be able to open it up and allow more people to play with it. So I see one question, does each writing script require its own model in which are available? How do I create one? Yes, so it depends on what level of accuracy. Normally what you would do is you would find something that's close to your script and then maybe retrain it on your particular script. So you might, if you're working in Syriac, say, you might find a Syriac model, run that, correct it, and then retrain it to create your own one. Which are available, you can have a look at these links or have a look more generally. At the moment, we don't have too many yet because we changed the system, but we're working on Syriac, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, and Old Vietnamese at the moment. But again, it's entirely open for anyone else to come and add their own models and share them as much as you like. That's my very quick, will be available as software to service. That depends very much on the hardware and the demand. We would like to, certainly within our institution, it is definitely software as a service. And part of the idea of the resilience project is about a European infrastructure. So in that case, again, we would very much hope to provide it at a minimum to people within the infrastructure. It's purely a question of hardware. As I'm sure you know, machine learning is very hardware intensive. So we will support as much as we can. But if not, again, the code is available as a self-install job. Another question, what format of text transcription is supported for upload? Yes, so skipping over that. So at the moment, Page and Alto XML, we are certainly adding TEI and we think IIIF annotations. There's some discussions about how exactly that will work. In the near future too, we are also adding annotations and other type of information. So the idea is to integrate it into a larger framework. And that again is where some of the IIIF annotations could very much come in. So we don't just have transcription, you also have other types of image annotation, as we know from other IIIF projects.
Great.
Thank you.
So I think if we go on, Peter, that's okay. And then if more questions come up at the end, we'll jump in with those.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you so much. Johannes, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Let me just quickly share my screen. Just a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is something I've been working on for the last 2 weeks. And it's highly related to the stuff that Peter just talked about. Our specific use case at the BSB is that we're currently planning to relaunch in autumn with our digital collections. And we have a lot of OCR, around 1 million OCR volumes, which have so far only been used for discoverability, so searching in the text. And we wanted to, with the relaunch, we wanted to be able to present the OCR since it's by now good enough to do some work with it. Maybe you've already seen it, but Mirador has support for annotation display. And you can use this to show transcriptions or OCR in a document. This is an example from the Welcome Library, a printed book where you have line annotations with the OCR text. These are displayed here as rectangles. You can select some rectangles and highlight them, so you can kind of image and text are separated, but you can still make the connections by highlighting them and correlating them. But what we wanted to do was make the text more usable by implementing a feature that most of you know from regular PDF viewers, that you can just drag on the image and select the text below the image. And this is something we've been able to accomplish with Mirador 3. So here I just enabled text selection for the specific canvas. And now I can just select some text in the image and copy it. And for example, I can pull up a text editor and just paste the text that I just selected. And it's, as you can see, it's a pretty good match. So yeah. And not only can you just select the text, you can also make it visible. This is kind of helpful to kind of gauge how good the OCR is, for example, for a given page or a given transcription. As you can see, here we have the text lines overlaid over the image. You can adjust the opacity so you can still kind of see what's below. And while this does not make for a very good reading experience because of the irregular line heights, I think it can be useful kind of, especially if you don't know a script very well and you just want to see what's below this. Yeah, so this is pretty much it. That's the current feature set. One thing that's also kind of nice, it follows your panning and zooming. So you can just zoom in on a specific section of the page and kind of maintain your selection and also kind of adjust the opacity. So it's basically like a regular panning and zooming experience with an image. You can also do it with the text. Yeah. So currently, this code supports kind of drawing text based on IIIF annotations that target the line level. So if you have IIIF annotations that contain a transcription of the text and they have the coordinates of the line on the canvas, the plugin is able to work with that. Additionally, it supports loading the text lines from OCR files that are referenced in the manifest. Currently, the formats supported are Alto and HOCR. But it shouldn't be a problem kind of to add support for TI, for example, as long as it contains the coordinates for the lines. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. There's a big caveat, like this is very much a work in progress and the public release won't be ready until in a few weeks, I think. But it will be on GitHub under a permissive license and you can just use it with your Mirador 3 instance, wherever you want to host it. And another thing is I've currently only tested it with very simple printed layouts. So I encourage everyone who has a use case for like more complex layouts from manuscripts, for example, to just send me a manifest. As long as the annotations or the OCR fulfill the requirements, so line level and coordinates, I should be able to get them working with this plugin. And I'm curious to see what people send to me. Layout is a very large topic. Yeah, so there are a few questions. Do you see this being used for translations of text? So yeah, actually, this is not something I've tested on a desktop PC, but on smartphones, on Android smartphones, there's a neat feature of the Google Translate app where you can just select any text on the screen and send it to Google Translate to kind of get a translation overlay. And I tested this with this plugin and it works perfectly, basically. As long as your OCR is good and it's one of the supported languages, you can actually get a pretty good translation of the text in the image. So I found this quite interesting. Opens up a lot of possibilities.
I think if you could just put a link to the plugin in the general.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's not yet ready for the public release. It's currently very much a work in progress, but I'll share the GitHub link once it's finished. I think I expect it to be finished, or at least ready for public consumption in a few weeks. So there's still a lot of work to be done on the code level and stability, as I mentioned. So it's going to take a few weeks, but it's going to be public and open source and usable by everyone. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. We'll move on to the next, and then we can circle back in our last 10 minutes for questions. Thanks, Johannes.
Thank you.
So from Germany, I guess let's move to France, and Regis will give us some information about the Blissimate project. Or did I skip an order? Regis, are you there? No. Oh, there it is. You're muted, Regis.
Okay, sorry. So thank you to the group chairs for inviting me to this session. So I'm going to give an update from Biblissima that will be very quick since we don't have new IIIF related features to show you for the moment, so, because we have mostly concentrated our efforts on providing access to more IIIF content, but not on developing new features. I can start, if you can see my screen, by giving you a brief overview of what we've done on our IIIF collections prototype. So this prototype is a search and discovery environment for IIIF compliant manuscripts and rare books dated before 1800. It is online since December 2018, but it's still a prototype, and we still consider it as a complement to the main Biblissima portal application, which aggregates more data from all kinds of libraries and research databases on medieval manuscripts, incunabulous, and rare books. Nevertheless, this prototype is designed to be linked as much as possible to the Biblissima portal, especially through the Biblissima authority files that form the backbone of all these applications in terms of metadata. But I think at some point in the future, we will merge all the data into the main portal. But currently, this is a separate website that lets you search across 14 IIIF compliant digital libraries in the world. So you have the complete list here on the home page, which represents a total of about 70,000, more than 70,000 objects whose metadata is indexed and aggregated into this search engine. We recently made a big update of the Gallica dataset, including more than 50,000 books, including a rough estimate of about 20,000 medieval manuscripts. And we also added in the previous weeks the digitized manuscripts from 2 libraries in southern France, namely Toulouse and Albi here. So this is here is Toulouse and Albi, small repositories of medieval manuscripts. And we'll continue to enrich and update the data as much as possible, especially the digital libraries, which are enriched on a regular basis, like Gallica or the BVMM, which are in this case. So in terms of features, a new thing we implemented in the last few months is the ability to create and share IIIF collections from this website. So I can show you live very briefly. So for example, I can start a search with a combination of an author like Dioscorides. And I can put a fuzziness operator to target other variants of this name, like Dioscoride or Dioscorides or Dioscoride with a K instead of a C, and put in and perform an exact search on a work by this author, like this, between codes to have an exact match. And here I get 75 books from different institutions that I can narrow using facets on the left, by digital collection, by library, or by place of origin, by language or date. So for instance, let's select this first one from the Bodleian libraries in Arabic. And let's say I will narrow my search only to have the BNF manuscripts in Greek. And let's pick this manuscript, for instance. And now I have so a selection of two witnesses that I can generate a IIIF collections from it and open them together in Mirador just by clicking on this button. So I have a viewing session with the two manuscripts I have selected, and I can just also tag this URL to reuse this collection elsewhere in another application on the web. Or I can simply export a part of the metadata to a CSV file to further reuse the metadata of these two items. Apart from this prototype, Biblissima also provides a broader portal on manuscript collections, mainly from Europe, but also from other places in the world, as you can see on this map of holding institution here. So mainly from Europe, but also from North America and from the Middle East and Russia as well. And so far, we've integrated into this search engine quite a lot of data, coming from library catalogs and specialized databases. And among this large number of data sources in the scope of Biblissima, in a very fragmented landscape, as you can imagine, we have two iconographic databases which contain detailed descriptions of illuminations and decoration, mostly in medieval manuscripts, but not only. So the first of these two databases is Mandragore, which is the database of illuminated manuscripts at the BNF, at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. And all the data from this database is already made available in the portal. So it's represented here. So it's more like more than 200,000 illuminations, and part of them being digitized and available via IIIF, and whose metadata have been integrated into this portal. But in France, we also have Initial, which is another big database of illuminated manuscripts held by all the other public libraries in France, apart from the BNF in Paris. And we are currently working hard to integrate the data from Initial, from this database, into this portal. Which represent thousands and thousands of images of illumination that will be added and made available via IIIF as well, all together in the same portal. And of course, it implies to reconcile, but it's outside of IIIF, but of course, we needed to reconcile the two vocabularies, the two iconographic vocabularies from Mandragore and from Initial to provide something that's useful for art historians and everybody else. One final word about the future plans related to IIIF in this context. So we are willing to integrate Mirador 3 as a replacement for Mirador 2 into the Biblissima portal. And also we would like to use the emerging IIIF content state API to store viewing sessions persistently in a standard way. So that's another area of work in the coming months. So I think that's it. So if you have a question, I can answer them later.
Great. Thank you so much, Regis. And if you have a question for Regis, just put it in the Q&A and we'll have time at the end to circle back to it as well. If we can go back to Germany now, I think we'll hear from Leander.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So can you see that?
Looks good.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. So unfortunately, Annika is not available today, so I'm happy to jump in and give some short update about our project, the German Manuscript Portal. Let me start with some quick facts about the project. We are 4 university and state libraries in Germany working together on the next German manuscript portal. The goal of the project is to build a central information platform for medieval and early modern manuscripts in German collections. And we want to provide our users with not only the images themselves, the digital facsimiles of the original manuscripts, but also of we want to provide them with descriptive information on the manuscripts, the so-called manuscript descriptions, and of course also with interoperable exchange formats like TEI and IIIF. One day we hope this new portal will replace its ancestor, the Manuscripta Medievalia platform. So this portal should become the central online access point for research on medieval and early modern manuscripts in Germany. The portal also splits up into 2 components, and 2 main components: the front office for end users to find, to discover manuscripts and associated documents, and in the back office where scholars can create their own descriptions of manuscripts. So what can IIIF do for us? Of course, all the manuscripts in the libraries and other institutions in Germany have to be integrated somehow into the portal. So our intention is to use IIIF as the main source for digital facsimiles to display the images in our portal, and using softwares like Mirador 3, we can provide our users with functionalities to display and compare images in a workspace-like environment, and also to create and save and exchange such workspaces later, annotate images, and so on. Yes, I somehow. So let me start with some quick impressions. It's very simple. Mirador 3 is our main component for in regard of the front office. You have seen this a couple of times already, I think, during the IIIF week. But yeah, one of the challenges we had to accept was to integrate Mirador 3 into a larger web application. We finally decided to build a single page application based on React, which implements different functionalities like searching in the manuscript portal, and of course also integrate the Mirador 3 workspace. Search in this portal should not only discover the manuscripts themselves, but also descriptions associated with these original objects. And one of the main features we are aiming for is to display in Mirador 3 not only the manuscripts, but also these descriptive documents, the manuscripts descriptions. And that's why I found Johannes Beiter's example very interesting, his plugin for Mirador 3. So maybe we can get in touch later and see if there's some, if you can work together on this. And I would like to show you an example my colleague Lutz Helm worked on. It shows you how to how we actually display manuscript descriptions in Mirador 3. So there's already a plugin built by Lutz, which renders XML TEI documents inside Mirador and makes them accessible. Let me slow this video down a little bit, if I can make that somehow. It's quite very fast. And see that again. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoop. So this is the XML TEI file, and here's a window inside Mirador showing the content of the manuscript's description. So what are we doing next? Still, I think one of our big challenges is to find a solution how to render TEI texts in Mirador, to find a final solution how to actually do it. And I think it's also very interesting and challenging to find a way how to integrate these data into the IIIF standard to make it a part of IIIF manifests, for instance. So we are still working on the alpha version. Everything is work in progress, and there's no public alpha version available yet, but we hope to publish such a demo system soon. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Leander. It looks really exciting. So please add your questions to the Q&A, and we'll have at least 5 minutes at the end. I'd like to close with one last demo in which I would like to maybe focus a little bit from a different angle, which is on a scholarly use case, but I might regard it as a little more downstream uses of IIIF. Once we have images available and once we have transcriptions made, what's the point of it all? What else can we do with it? So I hope that you can see my screen. Ben, can you see my screen?
Yep, you look great, Jeff.
Okay, great. So I titled this Stop Drawing Boxes. Another title I thought I might think of, given some of the demos we've seen, is once you have your transcriptions, don't leave your transcriptions in a line-by-line annotation. So that's a typical way we start, and I want to show some of the scholarly use cases that can occur, particularly in the area of discovery and transparency, when we do more with that text. So as a scholar, a use case I might have is to compare conceptual textual points within different manuscripts. So I have here an example of someone doing this from 2008 in an article in which he's tried to point out conceptual parallels between a text that survive in two different manuscripts, one at the British Library, the Peter Gracchus manuscript, and another at the BSB, John and Basil. And you can see that he's tried to point out where these parallel textual spots are. And in many cases, he's done a good job, though the point of connection is still somewhat general. And you can see some of the question marks. There are still places he hasn't yet discovered. But I might point out too that at the present, this isn't transparent. There's no way for me to quickly consult the data with which he's made this, these observations. So I either have to take his word for it, or I have to go through the laborious process of rediscovering these connections. And that takes a lot of work. And what I want to be able to do is quickly see the connection and see them in their manuscript witnesses and compare them very quickly at a granular level. So certainly IIIF has the promise of creating comparisons, And I think that in the use case I have in mind, we haven't quite delivered on this promise. So Mirador and IIIF makes it helpful or easy to bring in manuscripts into one viewer. But as this screenshot intends to illustrate, these are huge manuscripts with huge amounts of content. It's very difficult to find these specific places that parallel. You might say this is where a table of contents can be helpful, and the table of contents can, in a way, get us closer to the page or page ranges where a parallel might occur. But I think this still gets things a little bit wrong for a couple of reasons. First, I'm really looking for a text object, let's say 2 paragraphs that compare to each other, or 2 quotations that are the same. And I'm using the book coordinate reference to get to a page wherein somewhere the object that I really want is to be found. And so this still leaves some question marks of where I'm going to find these 2 comparable sections, and there's still a lot of work to be done to find those comparisons. And this might lead you then to try to make some annotations about, after you've finally found the points of comparison, to mark them as direct annotations on a manuscript. And this is what I want to say we shouldn't do. Right? I want to talk about creating a textual intermediary that makes this kind of discovery possible. Because not only does the table of contents response assume a level of granularity that you normally can't expect with a table of contents, it also assumes we've already discovered these points of connection. And my point here is that if we make our annotations in a slightly different way, we can allow the computer in IIIF to help us discover those connections automatically. So when I talk about getting our transcriptions out of lines, I'd like to see our transcriptions focused on text objects rather than on lines. And then those text objects being able to be mapped to the different lines on which they occur, and then in any particular manuscript. And once we do that, we can also create comparisons between the text content, so this paragraph 1, with other parallel text ideas, and then map out to the manuscripts on which those text ideas fall. So this is what I've done. I've transcribed these manuscripts, and then I've chunked them into conceptual sections, so granular pieces of textual units, paragraphs. And now I've run a script based on an n-gram search to compute a kind of similarity. And you can see that in this simple example, I'm running through 56 paragraphs in the first Graculus text, and I'm testing these paragraphs against every paragraph in the John Basel paragraph, roughly 127 paragraphs for each of the 56 paragraphs. And it's producing a similarity report. And the result of this script is an annotation list, but it's not annotations of transcriptions on images, it's transcriptions targeting one textual idea to another, which then can be further mapped to image regions. So I'll flip over here and illustrate. I could load this annotation list into a viewer, right? And here I want to think outside the viewers that privilege the codex page and think about the textual object. And you can see that I'm getting ratings of similarity. And pretty quickly we can see the highest rating of 8% is likely what we want, but we want to be able to check that with transparency. So I can take that textual idea, pop it in here, and compare it against the text item. And immediately I have transparency of why Marcolino had created this connection between these 2 manuscripts. Now, if I want to check that layer further, I can open up a IIIF viewer and view the precise image region on which that textual phenomena occurred and compare it here to the text in at the BSB. So I could, again, have both compared at a granular level and know exactly why I'm comparing them in this way. So that's the idea here. The point here is not only, these examples are a little bit minimal because there's only one manuscript witness for each of these textual ideas. But I might go over to another paragraph here, and you can see that I'm getting to the same conceptual paragraph in each manuscript from 4 different library institutions. And I could take that textual idea, come over here, and compare it to any other. And now I'm not just comparing one, I'm not just making an annotation on one manuscript, I'm making an annotation on 4 through a textual idea. Right? So I want to impress on the idea here that these coordinate regions were never made by hand. They're computed from the coordinates of the line regions that were generated by the computer, and then that combined with the paragraph idea, it computed the boundaries of this conceptual object. So I'd like to take that one step further and think about how we can make a global index of all textual objects in manuscripts all over the world. In this GIF, I've done the same method here with a Bible verse, Hebrews 11:1. And I've started with the verse Hebrews 11:1, and I've circled through every transcription to see if it has a high n-gram similarity. Once that's confirmed, I've now have an index of all instances of Hebrew 11:1. I click on any instance of Hebrews 11:1, and I get the precise region upon which Hebrews 11:1 falls in each manuscript. And then I can compare it and inspect it. So what I now have is a kind of index, not just of text, but an index of text objects as they appear in manuscript regions, no matter what manuscript they are or where they are. So that's the idea. I come back to the point, this is a scholarly use. So what I've tried to do here is confirm Marcolino's results to show that it works. And the point now is there are many more parallels that he hasn't found. And through the same method, I'm going to be able to identify parallel image regions on diverse manuscripts automatically. So that's kind of the use case I wanted to show, and I'll leave it at that if I can figure out how to unshare my screen.
Great, thanks a lot, Jeff. We have typed answers for a number of questions, but there's an open question for Peter from Tracy Seneca. Tracy writes, we have a large collection of handwritten forms. The output should ultimately be tabular data, not just text. Peter, I think you can see the question. Would you mind answering live?
Yes, sure. Yes, thanks for the question. It was something I wasn't able to answer in time, but the short answer is yes. We already have that feature where you can mark regions and characterize them based on function, essentially. And in fact, we have a project already with the French National Archives looking at exactly that use case. So they have manuscripts with regular tabular information, and be doing precisely that approach. So yes, absolutely, it's something we already have working, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it if you like.
All right, well, we're just about at time, I think. Again, many thanks to Josh, Meg, and Glenn for making all of this happen. Thanks to all of our presenters today, and I believe this will all be available online on the IIIF YouTube channel in good time as the other videos come up. Thank you all for joining us today. And Jeff and Rachel, thanks for co-chairing this committee, or this group.
Thanks for everybody attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, it was great. Thank you to Ben and Jeff for organizing.
Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, many thanks from me too, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Josh, you want me to post that on the general? Is there a Slack channel that you meant?
IIIF Week or
Got it.
Manuscripts or dealer's choice.
Great, thanks. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.